Now, this is exciting. The World Bank is predicting that the global economy will grow by 5.6% in 2021. That is the fastest worldwide expansion in nearly 5 decades. Back in 1973, to give you some perspective, the world economy grew by 6.6%. So, what is leading to this exciting new growth? Well, joining us is economic futurist Andrew Bush. So, Andrew, break this down for us. I mean, this is a massive, massive growth. What is the World Bank attributing to this growth?
Yeah, well, clearly it's two fronts. One is obviously the strides that have been made to get people vaccinated and the reopening of the global economy because of that, despite what's going on in India, but also what's been driven by clearly China, which came out of it a lot faster, and of course, just the tremendous amount of fiscal and monetary stimulus that's going on across the world, but specifically within the United States. A lot of people don't realize that the U.S. has engaged in fiscal stimulus that totals $12.4 trillion, and that's why we're growing in the United States at 6% in the first quarter and likely in the second quarter.
Wow. So what kind of differences are we going to be seeing in economic recoveries for developed nations versus developing nations? Because obviously there are some stark differences here.
That's right. So sadly, I mean, a lot of the developing nations didn't have access to the vaccines at the same time that the developed nations did. So that they're going to be behind the recovering cycle. But the developed nations obviously are coming out of this. We got good news this week from the CDC allowing travel to occur out of the United States to some extent to a lot of different countries. That'll increase the leisure and hospitality sectors across the globe. That's great news for a lot of countries, but it's an uneven, certainly, economic recovery. And the thing that really worries me right now is the rise in inflation that's going on in the United States and across the world in commodities, because that will hurt the other countries that are trying to start their growth. Having to pay up for those material prices will slow their output levels. So that's kind of the downside to what's happening.
Now, let's talk about which nations are expected to come out on top here, because we're also seeing massive growth within China.
Yes, definitely. But even there, we are starting to see the government start to slow down some of the spending that they had, some of the fiscal stimulus that they had. They just came out recently and said that they want to, try to cap some of these commodity prices that are really causing problems and disruptions within their economy, and certainly try to tamp down on housing. And housing is a really interesting story across the globe, not only in China, but also specifically in the United States. It's gone up so significantly. The housing prices have, even faster than the 2006-2007 period. So that's an inflation problem that's going on, and that's just going to continue to cause problems going forward.
What lessons do you think have been learned from the pandemic, especially when it comes to how we need to be investing our money?
Yeah, I think, a lot of countries look at this and said, we've had a lot of problems with our global supply chains, not only on the, obviously chips and things like that, but also with medicine. So I would expect Europe, the United States, and other countries to really start to look at whether they need to produce these vaccines and medicines in the in their own countries. Obviously, Israel is a big winner here because of what they did to vaccinate so many of the people in the population. So I think that's a lesson learned. I think, supply chains are a big problem. When China shut down, surprisingly, in February and March, that really caused a lot of problems globally. So I think manufacturing is going to be looked at differently, and whether or not you can get people to reshore away from China. So I think those are some of the big things. And then lastly, go big or go home when it comes to stimulating. I think that's really important, not to wait to see, whether the pandemic's going to really impact you. Really prepare for it now so that you can just pull that book off the shelf, open it up, and really get going quickly to stimulate the economy.
All right, Andrew, thank you for joining us with that breakdown.